much for staying with us. It's a Monday, a rainy one at that, but yes, it gives us all the reasons to wake up and say, yes, it's a new week. And of course, we have to find ways of approaching the week regardless, because yeah, it's November. And the 14th day of November, the year is coming to an end. Trust me, Christmas is around the corner. Every time I move around and set a few Christmas trees, it rains on me that yes, indeed, the resolutions we set, the goals we set, you know, the very time that you have to sit back, reflect, and ask yourself, how far have I gone? My name is Doreen Komhanja, and I do welcome you to our breakfast meeting. A lot is happening in the country, of course, economically, socially, politically. There's always so much to talk about. But of course, as we are taking it's, you know, political fights, economic fights. One says the economy is slow. You know, politically, someone somewhere is struggling. And of course, we all have these other issues. We have, you know, students demonstrating. We have now a demonstration at FUFA. We have all these things that could actually, you know, get us off, you know, the core objectives of the country as it is. And among the things that I actually thought that we had forgotten, that we once focused on so much, was the fight against HIV. Not because we've given up on it, but perhaps because, you know, with all that is going on, you know, it is quite easy for us to sideline this very huge, you know, serious issue taken up by other issues that can actually be solved at the end of the day. There is a time Uganda was holding the flag high, you know, against the fight against HIV. There is a time countries in Africa, countries in the world that used Uganda as model to fight HIV in their countries. But the question is, what happened? What happened to the country seen as an example to other countries? What went wrong? Where did we give up? How did we give up? Did we give up or we simply became complacent, you know, thought that, okay, we are there, we've reached, and, you know, perhaps thought everyone had gotten the message directly and was perhaps implementing whatever had been, you know, told out there. So yes, this morning, we are getting back on that fight. We are reminding you that while you think that we succeeded at this fight, AIDS is still a reality in Uganda. And the earlier we realize this, the better. How are we going to realize this? By actually, one, accepting it, and then two, realizing that unless you do something, yes, we will talk, you know, Crane will talk, but it normally starts with you as a person. Well, this morning, we are looking at HIV/AIDS that happens to be a disease, a killer disease. A reality in the country. It's claimed lives, young, old. Trust me, it is a reality. And unless we get to face it, we will not be able to win this fight. Earlier today, actually, Paul was telling me that we need to call it a response and not a fight. And I was telling him that, no, Paul, we need to be hard on HIV. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very well,
good morning,
thank you.
Faith. It's
morning.
a pleasure having you in our studios. Well, when it comes to HIV/AIDS, I will tomorrow. Trust me. Well, I'm having Faith Kimbabazi, the director Crane, that's a Child at Risk Action Network, and Mr. Paul Kamunga, Viva Africa Network Consultant. A very good morning, and thank you for being in our studios. I just talked about HIV, and I gave a few facts, like there's a time Uganda was used as an example. There's a time we walked with our head high, you know, known to having fought HIV, and almost managed it. But then later on the curve drops.
Yeah.
What went wrong?
It's a difficult question to answer, but I think we can tell a few things that went wrong.
Yes.
One of them is that we basked in this whole thing about success. We thought we were successful, and yet I think we made significant progress. We should have seen it as progress in responding to HIV. And I think as years rolled on, we became complacent as communities. The message changed, the emphasis changed, and it's taken us, you know, many more years behind in terms of the patterns now.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, now, Faith, I did mention Crane. Could you first of all tell us about Crane? What do you do, and how did you get here in the first place?
Okay.
Yes.
Crane is Children at Risk Action Network, and we work with membership of 120 organizations, which are schools, residential institutions, churches, different organizations that look after children that are at risk or vulnerable, which is 96% of that in Uganda. So that membership of 120 after about 70,000 children. Our vision is to see children safe, well, and fulfilling their God-given potential.
Okay.
And our priority areas are the right to education, the right to family, the right to safe places. And safe places covers children's rights. And so one of those is to help children live safely, whether they have HIV/AIDS or not.
Right.
But also parents that are having these children need to watch their sexual behavior, their behaviors in general, the youth, because HIV/AIDS is still live and still kills. I know people live over years, but still we want to stop the infection of HIV/AIDS so that those who are here who have it can live positively, but we need to stop it at some point.
Very interesting. So at the end of the day, you know, still to your faith, when did you realize that actually we had to get back to the fight on HIV? Because like Paul and I said, there's a time we gave up. You know, we had all these options coming in. We had all these solutions. We had all, you know, everything was on paper, yeah? We had the ABC strategy put in place. It's either abstinence, you're either careful, or condom use. And this kind of doing some bit of complacency that saw us slightly lose the fight. When, or better still, when did Crane get back to realizing that no, we haven't won, the battle is still on?
We've always been aware of that, but you know that some of this response or fight against different issues that come up is due to lack of funding.
Yes.
But we are in the background continually fighting against HIV/AIDS. So we did get someone to push us in the direction of what our priority was. Our strategic plan for the next 5 years was to focus on that area of HIV/AIDS. And we knew that they were going to help us build a studio, which we're calling Hope Studio, that uses media and music, looking for people with talent to put all this into, to put HIV issues into music and drama and make sure that it's publicized about HIV/AIDS and the fight and the response for it. So we've always been there with it, but it's now coming a bit stronger because of some of the funding we've got.
All right, now, Paul, you have the statistics. What's the current situation?
Well, it's a dire situation. We have around 7.4% of adult population infected with HIV. Over 1.6 million people live with the virus. A bigger part of a lot of the infection is particularly highest among people living in a marital relationship or cohabiting. That's where we find the highest growth in new infections.
Amongst the married?
Yeah, amongst the married, it's growing faster there.
Wow.
It used to be the young people.
But
that's
now
catching up quite fast as well. Many young people also getting the virus now, and particularly the girls, which is a big challenge.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's sort of like the situation. There are few people who are on antiretroviral treatment, which are drugs that help reduce the growth of the HIV in your blood. And that is around 2013 was around 64%, but now with the new WHO guidelines, it is about 30%.
All right, now let's just go a little slow, on these facts. Let me start with the number of infections, the increase in the infections. Let me start with the married couple, the couples out there, the married and those cohabiting.
Yeah.
If the infections are on the rise amongst the married, what does this mean? Are people not faithful? Are people taking things for granted? What are the causes and what can be done?
I think one of the challenges is relationships among married couples.
The network.
The network. You have people having and that's high. And even when they're in that kind of situation, less than 30% use protection. And so what do you expect if people are involved in multiple sexual relationships? They get HIV from outside their marriage and bring it into their marriage, and so on and so forth. That's a big issue for us as a country. And that is why, for people like Crane, the whole issue of family plays in. And the next challenge is going to be the children that are very important to us as a network, as we support Crane. So those become big issues for us. So family, children.
So how is Crane approaching this challenge, especially amongst the married?
We know that there are places married gather and listen to leaders, and one of those is in churches.
Okay.
So we're working through churches, pastors, to use their forums to strengthen families and marriages. not only for the sake of HIV/AIDS, but also for other issues like separation of children from families. But HIV/AIDS in this instance is the church needs to come back to its priorities. It needs to come back to the center of why it's there. One of those is marriages, strong model marriages where people are faithful to each other, they are not having multiple partners, they're able to give their children a moral stand that says this is what is right and this is what is wrong. And therefore, with HIV/AIDS, if you're not married, one, do not have sex, because that's one of the ways you get HIV/AIDS. If you're married, be faithful. And for some young people, even when they're in church, they're sexually active. And therefore, what do you do if those are sexually active? First of all, yes, the pastor has got to deal with their character, but they've got to teach them, what do I do if I'm sexually active? What facts do I need to know?
Right.
Yes.
And Paul, you mentioned, the young people. It's been on, but in this case, you single out the girls.
Yeah.
Why girls?
Girls are very vulnerable.
Okay.
We know that in this country, that sexual debut for girls is much earlier than for boys, and they're taken advantage of by men, and largely because they don't have disposable income. So girls are abused. But also, when a girl starts engaging to earlier age, they're physiologically not ready, and their body is not ready, and so they put themselves at a higher risk. So girls get at a much higher risk for getting this virus.
So is it hinged on the cross-generation sex?
It
Yeah.
can be that, but a lot of times it's also on the same peer-to-peer kind of sexual activity. So, but Paul was saying.
Yeah, cross-generational sex is a big one. You have older men coming down to take advantage of the younger, unsuspecting girls. That's huge. Whether even if they're in college or university, they still are getting involved in into sexual relationships with much older men. Some of them are married, and some of them have HIV, and so you get this situation where many of them then get the virus.
All right, but this is, I think it was last year, 2015, when a report was released indicating that Uganda had the third highest, number of new infections, and that was Nigeria and South Africa.
Yeah.
But again, there's a time, it breaks my heart every time I see us losing this battle, and yet there's a time we were at the forefront.
Yeah.
Can we get back to being where we were? Can we get back to being used as a model? Can we get back to being used as an example? Is it possible?
It is possible. One, back to what we used to do in the 90s.
What were we doing that we are not doing now, Faith?
Actually, I was part of a project called True Love Waits that used to encourage young people to wait for sex until they're older, over 18, or until they're married. Because I'm a Christian, and so principles are you don't have sex until you're married. So, but these days we're so complacent, as you said, both whether we're using the ABC, we're still complacent in all. People say HIV is here, we have ARVs, so it's okay. If I get it, I'll swallow ARVs.
People are living.
Yes, and I can live for over 20 years. It's okay to have HIV/AIDS. I know people born with HIV/AIDS and they're living positively. And so we don't want that stigma to continue. But we need to stop because it still gives you issues. And also because our country is having issues sometimes with the lack of ARVs. And therefore, when there is and people do not adhere to their routine of taking the ARVs, and so their viral load lessens, and therefore they get sick and die. I know the deaths have been reduced per year, but we are still dying of HIV/AIDS. And therefore we need to continue to fight this disease. We know that we can fight malaria, we're doing different things about different diseases, but HIV/AIDS is still one that we can stop.
Yeah, but again, Faith, can we say that Uganda simply became a victim of its own success? Especially after the introduction of the ARVs, like you've said.
I think, yeah, maybe yes and no. Yes, in the sense that we felt we had got there, and yet we're still on the learning curve. And as I said, we just made progress, and we thought that we had done it. So we needed to continue the efforts at a much higher speed, which I think we went sloppy a little bit because of the success. No, in the sense that HIV changes every day. It does, the virus mutates, but even the challenges of HIV are changing. For example, when they have the onset of antiretroviral treatment, there are many people who are taking the drugs, and that's very good, because once their viral load, HIV, goes down, therefore they are less infectious, even if they are involved in some sexual relations. However, that can be abused if people do not take the drugs consistently. Yes. And some might even give up and say, after all, the drugs are here, let's go and have fun. And that becomes a massive challenge. But also, Faith has talked about, there are many young people who are born with the virus. Yeah. How do we respond to these ones? We're just learning. How do we help many of these people who are born with the virus, live a positive life? And they're doing very well. There are many who are living positive. But there are those who don't know. Testing has come. There are not many people who have, not as many have they should have by now. Probably around 40% of the people have tested from the stats that we see, but many of them are repeat testers, so they don't know their state, whether they have the virus or not. So that's not a bit in that area, and in that sense, we begin to lose it. But also the involvement of other players, the government. What is government doing to raise funds? Is AIDS fund? The bill has not been, passed into an act.
The HIV and AIDS Trust Fund. Yeah.
And so we question where's our commitment as a country, as a government, where we should have put a lot more emphasis in those kinds of things. We are not. We're waiting for somebody else's money to deal with our problem. And so what about the rest of us, the church, the radio? What kinds of messages are we giving? There's a time when a lot of what we're doing in terms of prevention of HIV, we're interacting at individual level with communities. Now it's been, public messages, radio messages, and they're just open out. Messages to people. I think we need to do a lot more than messaging. Engage with communities and find out what are the issues that propagate this challenge. Yeah, and so we've got to consider that the response is on. You prefer to call it the fight is on, and not feel that we've got there yet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Ghanaians have also not choosing the simplest, methods of preventing HIV/AIDS, like the use of condoms. What is Crane doing about this? How are you pushing this? I would call it a campaign, or the information, or the sensitization. Yeah.
What we're doing at the moment is using media and advocating for children to get messages about how they feel about HIV/AIDS, put them into music and sing, because we know that people will listen to songs. People will go to pay money for entertainment, and therefore we think that this is an avenue that we can use for children to advocate for themselves, but also for us to push them forward in talking about HIV/AIDS and all the things that they're feeling about it, because they don't express themselves. And so for us, because we work with children under 18, it is through music and media.
Oh, yeah.
So we're using advocacy through television, we're using advocacy of word of mouth by going down to the community and talking to children. Also encouraging the children that are living with HIV to live positively. And we've worked with Baylor, and they also have many children who have HIV,
yeah.
but they're living positively and they're healthy. But we are fighting it in that way, through music and media.
Yeah, all right. Now, I think Faith also mentioned this, and Paul, we hear, lots of people, Parliament, last year, I think, when it came up with the HIV and AIDS Trust Fund, proposal, it was an issue of how do we get back to the drawing board? How do we get back to doing what we did in the 90s? And, discussions or debates, raged on whether what was used in the 90s to drop the virus prevalence, rates from 15% to, was it 7%, 7.3%, then can actually apply. Because like Faith says, now you're using music, the trends have changed, the environments have changed, the population has grown. Do you think that what we used then can actually apply today? Or better still, how do we respond to the changes and still keep on with the fight?
Yeah. I think there are lots of things we can borrow from what we did then.
Yeah.
Continue to sensitize people. Can you imagine the children who were born in the 90s, early 90s and 80s? We talked to them about HIV a lot, how it's spread, how it's transmitted, and how it's prevented. And we thought that's an old message.
Yeah.
But 20 years later, who knows how it's transmitted? Maybe people do not know as much. And so that emphasis will still be. What what has happened now is that we have a better understanding of the epidemic of HIV. We talk about key populations. Who is the most affected population? Who is the most infected population? How do we address the issues that they're going through? We know that now we talk about high-risk sexual behavior. What is high-risk sexual behavior? We know that people have a low perception of risk. How do we make sure that people recognize that this is a risky behavior that you're involved in, that you perceive that this is risky and therefore I'll not do it? How do we ensure that people access antiretroviral treatment? If mothers are pregnant, how do they go into prevent child transmission of HIV? The therapies to do that, and therefore we know better. Testing for HIV. How do we ensure that people test and regularly, not once, but they do it on a more regular basis? And so because we know a bit of that, we know what to emphasize. We now talk about safe male circumcision, which is something that we know as government, as wherever it is, communities, this is something that we will try and do. But there are things that behavioral factors like in families, you have gender-based violence, big issue. And all these things propagate HIV. Now, because we have a better understanding, we know what buttons we should be touching in order to respond to HIV even better than ever before. So what we did in the past is helpful. Our increased understanding of the current situation is very helpful, and that should help us moving forward in responding to HIV.
Very interesting. All right, finally, Faith, as you know, we've a discussion, for the mother, the expectant mother living with HIV, AIDS, what are your final words to them? What do you have to tell them? How can they, protect themselves, ensure that they live longer, live positively, like you've said, but also prevent, passing it on to the unborn baby? Yeah.
I think for the once they are pregnant, they need to go and test to see if they're HIV positive. And as soon as they find out if they're positive, then they need to go on ARVs, no matter what their viral load is. Because once they take the ARVs, then they're able to control their viral load and suppress the HIV. And therefore, once it is suppressed, and they will carry the child full term and even deliver without passing on the virus to the child. So it's the consistency of taking their ARVs, getting support, psychological support from counselors to be able to know that they can do this, but also to be honest about it. And so children are being born HIV-free from parents who have HIV. And therefore we can do it, and the mothers can do it if they are honest.
Very true. Yeah. All right, now Paul, finally, what are your final remarks? Scourge itself on HIV/AIDS, but of course, still about Crane. What else are you looking at? What other fight are you taking on? I'm sorry, I will not use the word response because I don't want to be polite. There's no need of being polite, on this. I'm sorry, but no. Yes.
I think one of the things is to think about loving people with HIV. Yeah. We need to deal with issues of stigma. Okay, stigma drives the epidemic. And people like the church be key players here in responding to HIV. So that's one place that I think that would be a thing to emphasize. Government, yes, if you do your part, provide the services, facilities in hospitals. The good news is that in all 112 districts of Uganda, there's a health facility that can provide prevention of mother-to-child treatment, at least one. Yeah. Which is a big feat that has been achieved. Young people, I think for me a call to young people is that please recognize that HIV is with us. Yes. And if making choices in life, choose well, be careful. Yeah. Perceive that risk is very high for any activity you engage in, which can get you to get the virus. Right. For marrieds, stay faithful to each other. It's a big message for them.
What are they looking for? As in, be faithful. It's that simple, for crying out loud. Looking at statistics that Paul just gave us, an increase in the infections amongst the married in Uganda to Swala. As you really, look at Crane helping us, as we're looking at the government, I think we also need to help ourselves, and it starts with us at the end of the day.
Just to add on that, I need to my response or my. I was going to say my issue with men is that they do not want to say they can control themselves. Most of them think they should have sex with everybody, but they can't. They don't have to. They have a wife, they can be faithful to one wife.
But and then as you move around, you bring it back to this faithful wife who's done nothing but start home and break for you.
Yes, so men needs
Sad.
to take up the mantle also and fight
Yeah.
and use the family planning devices like the condoms, and
If they cannot be faithful,
take
let them use
responsibility.
condoms.
Exactly, take responsibility to say we are in charge of our bodies, not our bodies being in charge of us.
Very true. Paul, is it true that men cannot control themselves, like Faith has said?
No, that's not true. They can't control themselves. They themselves. We just choose to.
It's the person.
Yeah. I've been married for over 20 years. I've controlled myself, one wife.
Maybe
Yeah, so
you need
men
to tell.
can.
Maybe you need to tell them what
Yeah.
you're doing. That you know they can always get to learn, borrow, leave, copy, and paste. No editing.
Part of the secret is God. Part
Very
of the
true.
secret is fearing God.
And of course,
saying,
marrying
yeah,
your friend.
Yeah.
Because
that's
if you
true.
love your friend, then you will not put their lives at risk. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much, Faith. It's been a pleasure. And of course, Crane at large, thank you very much for taking on the mantle to fight HIV/AIDS. Uganda. And to the viewers, thank you very much for staying with us. Be safe. It's abstinence for you, the underage, below 18. It's be faithful to the married. You know, such an increase in infections, visuals, we shouldn't be getting at this really as a country. And of course, be faithful. It does not hurt. You just have to do what Paul just said, you know, fear God, fear the person you have, and of course, see them as a friend, see them as family. Then, of course, you will prioritize their lives. And at the end of the day, use condoms. It's that simple. It's the simplest method that we have to actually prevent HIV/AIDS as a country. Well, that's it from me, the Rincom Hunch. There's going to be yet another breakfast meeting. We'll be and this time around, we are focusing on immunization. So mothers, fathers, expectant mothers, this is a show for you to watch after the break. Good morning.